charging.
Oh, yes.
Are you guys going?
I'm planning to go.
I'll go.
I just hope it's not too long.
Yeah. Did you?
No, I don't know what that is.
Oh, well, it's in one of the.
Oh, it's
We
yeah.
got it. We got an email.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a handout. It's not a handout.
Which I think.
That's not fun.
Oh, it's just fun. Okay, it does, yeah. Yeah, I prefer it actually.
I have two.
I did that yesterday.
Oh,
Thanks, Mom. But you're the supervisor. Oh, my fire.
When you're done.
Yeah.
You got two.
Well, I'm gonna talk about that. I got two different things and I thought of it as an afterthought, so.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Saugatuck Board on December 4, 2019 at 6 p.m. And do a quick roll call. Aldrich?
Here.
Bickford? Here. Helmrich?
Here.
Marcy? Here. Osmond? Let it be noted that everyone is in attendance. And if you'll please stand to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like now to open the floor for public comment. And just a reminder, you're limited to 3 minutes. And well, you're limited to 3 minutes. Is there anybody in the first row? Second row? Third row?
Wait a second.
First, great seeing everybody. With the County Commission, I'll just give you just a few brief updates. First, John and Griffin, thanks for attending the Harbor informational sessions that we've had, and your questions have been wise and helpful within just the discussion of it, and I see you have it part of your agenda. So I'm anxious to hear how that outcome is, and if you had any questions for me, I'd love for you to ask me before I leave. I don't know if you'd go, Dee, what about this, or something.
Are you leaving early?
Yeah, I have to speak at another group at 6:30. But, some things that we're doing, courthouse planning, if you've been to the courthouse, you know that we're just having a tough time with space, and even that security system as you go in, we've had so many complaints on that. We made a decision to move a central entrance on the north side right in the middle. So right where it L's there, we're gonna put an entrance in there, and we're gonna just change some of the, structure of how things flow within it as far as for safety, for getting people in and out. So I think you'll appreciate that. That's going to take some time. It's going to go to architects, and we have some things to do with that. Also, if you haven't talked to our Bob Janeski from here, he just spent about $360,000 on a new computer system there, which is going to make everything online for us. So before you had to go in there for a marriage license, for a death certificate, for property records. So now you can go property records here, go online, you can get it. With things being paid here instead of having to do that traveling. So I'm very appreciative of Bob. He gave me a tour of it a couple weeks ago, and it's been done very well. Smart 911, many of you have heard of that with other county dispatchers. As far as now you call 911, they go, well, what is your emergency? That's about all they know. They know there's an address there, but now you're going to have the chance to go, I have this many kids, this is how you get in, this is how you get out, these are the cars I have. So the officer that's going to your house knows all that stuff as far as where the emergency is, some things about your house, some things they should look out for, and things about your family to give help to someone that might need help. So I think that's very good. The testing is being done right now. It will be implemented in January. And then just, we had a digital county award. We've been in the top 10 in the country for like the last 4 years. And we did that once again, and it's quite an award for counties up to 200,000. And it's just a statement, I think, about how we're doing things. As far as you're trying to do things as well and customize for the customer as you can. We're doing the same thing. And I've just seen excellence within that field, and I'm just very proud of them. Just want to mention it to you. And then today I had an LEPC meeting, local emergency planning. And we just want to say to you again, there's about this group puts together all the hazardous material farms, companies that have something that could endanger citizens. And by law, they go to them and they go, what do you have? What's your emergency plan in case there's a spill, in case this would blow up? And they work with fire departments to actually have a plan that I sign, I look over with 4 other groups, and we go, boy, this is great, fire departments, here's what you got. When they go there, they know all these things. I can go right to the shutoff. This is the poison that's there. So they know all those factors. We just want to give you a date. We have a local official conference for all of you on September 30th. The trust will start from 6 to 8:30. You'll get that flyer out to you in case you'd want to go to it. And then just lastly, we're, as you are doing, looking at the 2020 budget, we're in the midst of that. In the midst of that means we have 11 different unions. We're in the middle of those contracts, let alone establishing our budget for next year. And we're diligent working on that, and it's great to report to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Third row? Fourth row?
Yes, that's just you.
Thanks. Still on water. Hi, well, thanks for being here.
Can you state your name?
James Brandt. James, you might want to use the mic. James Brandt, yes. I want to tell you what brings me here, what happened, and some thoughts on perhaps what the township might do, which are opinions. What brings me here is a belief, and the belief is that it's not okay that people interact unknowingly with herbicide, a toxic herbicide. My belief is it's not okay that people can unknowingly expose their pets and their children to toxic herbicides and track them into their home. So that's my belief. That's what brings me here. So what happened was, about 3 years ago, I moved into where I live. I live on the corner of Newport and Riverside Drive. And when I moved in, it's an association. Some folks offered to say, do you want to take care of that? And I said, no. But after living there a year, it's all overgrown, it is weedy, and I thought to myself that would it kill you to go out and pull some weeds and make it look a little nicer. And so I did that, and I planted actually some giant sunflowers. The problem with those, and I planted those towards the end of July, I started them and I planted them, is that they face east, and for everyone pulling in from the west, the road, I just felt that didn't look right. So anyway, last fall I planted some mallow, which I felt was indigenous, and looked really nice, and I was very careful about it. And because it's very busy that time of year for me, it was really the beginning of July where I was able to pull back the weeds and so forth, expose everything, get it looking nice. And a couple days after I did that, I noticed they just keeled over and died. And I took a closer look and I noticed all the vegetation in that area was dying. So this alerted me to that something had been sprayed there, and I checked with people who had lived in the area for a long time, and they said yes, the county sprays. That's an area that I have been in pulling weeds, gardening, that I walk my dog through. I have a new dog, and he tends to eat grasses and so forth. And I see people in the neighborhood jogging, walking, pets, so forth, through there. So that is what happened. So I wrote a letter to the road commissioner, which you have in your correspondence, asking to know what was sprayed, and asking if he could address the fact that it's a sensitive area, in that I should tell you that the property, there's a creek that runs right behind the guardrail that empties into the bayou, which is also right behind the bayou, which feeds the Kalamazoo River. So that's what happened. So I think my primary concern has to do with my belief that there was no posting of this herbicide, which before or after it was sprayed. So what, in my opinion, perhaps can the township do? One thought I have is that perhaps the township can advocate on behalf of the citizens who want to have the choice of whether they expose themselves to aqueous Roundup. It was on the telephone with me that the road commissioner identified the product, although he hasn't done that in writing. The second thought I had that the township can do is to let people know what's being done, that the county sprays the roads with Roundup, and you need to know that. But a little bit more than that, it's really difficult to find out. What?
About 1 more minute?
Yep. To find out exactly what is being done. You know, like somebody here asked me, is it done just once a year in July? I don't know. I haven't gotten a response. Is it done 3 times a year? So I thought maybe that is something that the township can be helpful with, is identifying exactly what is being done. And the other thing I think the township that might be helpful is to determine and perhaps mark what are sensitive areas. Are there any sensitive areas? I think there are. I think that is one. There's places where I noticed they've been spraying where there's a creek right there and so forth. And finally, does the township maintain any of its own roads. I'm not sure. This is perhaps something, it's a township spread. So again, the primary thing is my belief that people should have the choice of whether to interact with this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
Oh, thank you.
Hearing none, close the public comment period and move on to approval of the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to look over the agenda?
Yeah. I would like to make a motion to amend the agenda tonight to discuss the use of aqueous Roundup by the Allegheny County Road Commission, and I'd like this to be added as the first item under new business.
I'll second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. As amended?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended. I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The next thing we have on our agenda are the invoices, the paid and the not paid invoices. We have the list that was just provided to us of the unpaid for the the bills that were received after the packets were distributed. And I would entertain a motion to accept the accounts payable invoices that were paid but need to be approved in the amount of $1,172.95, and the accounts payable invoices to be paid for a total of $34,054.36. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So the total is?
The total of all three of them, for the card member services, the accounts payable invoices to be paid, and then the one submitted after. Those were out of the total of this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Second. Or do I make a motion?
You make a motion.
I make a motion to approve the, the invoices for $46,318.96.
Support that.
Any discussion? Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Next we have the treasurer's report information. John, could you review that, please?
Yes, I can. So our general fund bank balance is now at, this is as of yesterday, or this morning, $2.4 million. It's inched up a little bit since last month. The bottom line here to carry away is all of our expenses paid out are balanced by what is coming into the township from both our profit sharing with the state as well as the tax disbursements that we make back to the township. Our investment, our certificate of deposit value is at $748,000. It's come up $1.3 thousand since last month. And just again, I reported last month, but our year-end 2019, our fiscal year, which ended on June 30th, this is unaudited because the audit will not take place until August, but it stayed the same, October, right? Revenues for the fiscal year ran at 14% ahead of budget, and expenses were 15% under budget. It's hard to believe we're 2 months in already to the new fiscal year, the 2020 fiscal year, and as of the end of August, revenues are running at 72% of budget. This is nothing to be alarmed about. It's mostly timing with disbursements and being so early into the new year. But expenses are running 20% other. So that's still pretty tight, I'm happy to report. And just a reminder, as the clock ticks down, we have 1.5 weeks left. Monday, September 16th is the deadline for summer tax payments, and happy to report they're pouring in very healthily. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next we have the minutes of the August 7th, 2019 regular meeting. Has everybody had a chance to look at those?
Yep.
Find any corrections or additions or deletions?
Either I'm getting soft or they're just getting better and better.
Oh, no, I took a lot of time to fix
I
it.
know.
We're all looking
It's
at
a
John.
challenge.
No, I didn't find a single typo.
Wow.
Anyone else did, but-
That's a first.
Wow.
Then I'm going to move that we accept the minutes from last month's board meeting as presented.
That would be the August 7th
August,
meeting?
yes.
Okay. Is there support?
I'll support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. And we had some correspondence this month, and I'm happy to report that staff has already responded to all of the correspondence that we received. We had Wayne Brower regarding the International Fire Code, Taylor Lawbrick regarding short-term rentals, and Kendra Briggs, Ned Nasser, Delios, with an unpronounceable last name, Belinda Pettinga, and Carol Springer all submitted correspondence regarding the chip seal on 62nd Street. And James Brandis, we received correspondence from him, and he did just speak to that about the application of herbicides by the County Road Commission.
Is that under correspondence or no?
We just got that today.
I don't
No?
think so.
Okay, it was in the email from R.J. Peterson, was that meant for correspondence?
No.
Okay, so it was in my gathered materials, okay.
Yes.
Any questions about the correspondence?
Nope.
Okay, then we'll move on to presentations by the Kalamazoo Lake Harbor Authority. Mike Van Loon and Ken Schuster.
Good evening. Mike, Ken. We're here to discuss, I know there's a lot of you that are new, to discuss the genesis of the Kalamazoo Lake Harbor Authority and ultimately our request for the township to become involved with that authority. So Ken and John both predate me in terms of experience on that authority, so I will defer to them with for adult supervision. So we'll get started. Just real quick, you know, a number of projects over the years we've tried to, in terms of dredging, you know, improvements to the lake, to the river, all the different things that the separate municipalities have tried to do over the years. And all of the various alphabet agencies from both the state and the federal government have said, you know, if we were to speak as one voice, that the three municipalities, that is, we would probably have a better chance of cooperation and improvement and participation in some different grants and some other programs that both the state and federal agencies carry on over the years. So that's where the Cal Lake Authority was the idea for that came up, and originally it was to be all three municipalities. Everybody wanted, the idea was for everybody to put up some money to have a stake, you know, maybe for mailing or for some projects or some legal consultation, et cetera. And recognizing, you know, in hindsight, that asking all three municipalities for the same amount of money was probably not fair. So the township kind of walked at that a little bit, and did not join because of that. And so over time, the two cities, Douglas and Saugatuck, move forward with the authority, and we've been making some progress on some fronts. We've worked with the EPA, you know, regarding the Superfund issues. We've worked with other, you know, DEQ and other agencies in terms of what we can and can't do, and you know, there have been some minor victories along the way, but given the presence of the township regarding the stretch of river and Cal Lake, pretty much just the river that the township touches, we feel it's important that the township be involved as well. So there's been some new inertia, so to speak, to get the township involved, and one of the things that both cities agreed on is to not ask the township for money in arrears, so to speak. So anything, if you were to join, there would be no startup fee, so to speak. So that's kind of one of the reasons that we feel it would be beneficial. We can, in the same light that we did the tri-community plan, we feel that the three municipalities working for the Cal Lake, working together as part of the Cal Lake Harbor Authority would be beneficial when reaching out and trying to get things done in the harbor. So with that, is there something that you would like to add, Ken?
No, you did a nice job in covering it. I guess I would only add that it's been our policy, and it's in the bylaws, that we're not, the authority doesn't have the ability to commit any of the entities, municipalities, to fund anything. So when we do have a project coming up, and I guess the most expensive one was a few years ago when we did the master plan, Douglas and Saugatuck councils both agreed to move forward. Had we not, we would have the option to opt out of the project and not fund it, and that would be the same for the township. So you're not committing to do whatever the majority, if you will, of the Harbor Authority wants to do. You have your own ability to decide whether you want to be in or out of any expenditure.
In fact, the township previously had legal representation review the bylaws, and an amended or an updated resolution was put forward that kind of got lost in the shuffle of the activity of the last few years, so with the township. So we would just ask that you revisit that resolution. If we need copies of that, I don't know, John, if you have that from the archives, or if that's something that we can get to the council, we can certainly do that. So if you want, we can resurrect that and make sure that that updated version gets that, even though it was your legal representation that put that together. So
I'm sure I have it in my study closet at home. Yeah, I would like to
bring a
request it.
paper copy
Yeah.
with me.
If you could submit it to us, maybe send it directly to Griffin and Cindy, and then we'll all have it so we can re-review.
okay, no, that's fair. That's fair. And how about the bylaws? We can certainly
Sure.
get a copy of that to you guys as well. So.
All right.
So again, our goal today is to re-invite the township to join the Cal Lake Harbor Authority, and we could work together. We're all enjoying the high water right now. Some people enjoying it more than others, or not. But one of the things a lot of people don't realize is with the sediment, the siltation that's happening in the river, is as the water's up, the bottom keeps going up too. So when that water goes down, it's just going to be worse than it was when it was low before. So it's not an immediate problem today, but the dredging and navigation of the harbor and the river could potentially be a problem in just a few short years. We all saw how quickly the water came up, so it could go down just as quickly. So your participation back in the authority would be most welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. Having spent 4 years as the non-voting representative of the township on the authority, it's very dear to my heart, and I want to thank you guys for coming back and revisiting this with us. Can you clarify, just remind me and us, if the township votes to rejoin, how many seats would we have?
Two.
And I'm just wondering, I know that in the last year or two, Douglas has set up its own independent harbor authority.
Correct.
Could you speak to that in terms of if that's had impact on the Cal Lake Authority, or just thoughts?
Okay. Douglas set up its own harbor authority partly because of, they wanted to have a municipal marina. That's another thing that all these different agencies are telling us in terms of funding. All the marinas in Saugatuck and Douglas up to this point have been private, so they're saying, why are we gonna, generate, taxpayer money, either federally or state, to help the harbor? So by, establishing its own harbor authority, Douglas is in the process of buying Point Pleasant, and also is, establishing, a marina at Wade's Bayou that will ultimately have day slips, shopping docks, and perhaps, and hopefully even seasonal slips, with Point Pleasant obviously being mostly set up for seasonal slips. So we will then have the municipal marina to be able to hopefully encourage or engender funds to help with harbor maintenance and whatnot.
And that
does not conflict or
those two potential public marinas would still be considered public marinas within Cal West.
Yes, that's true.
In terms of funding and grant potential.
Yes, sir.
Cool. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Any more questions?
Okay. All right, well, we'll get to that information so you guys can look.
Yeah, I just would like to make the comment that, pending getting that for sort of a new set of eyes, a new legal review, and then, I think you all know my intention would be that we would move to a point to vote on joining. That could maybe happen.
Would you be willing to serve on that board, John? I know you did a good
I don't
job
know.
last time, so consider it.
Well, I'll consider anything.
Okay.
But there would be two seats this time.
Okay. One from the board and one.
The manager? Oh,
Correct, but they have to be township residents,
okay.
so.
We'll see if Mr. Peterson is still interested.
Listen to that, Jim. Just one final thought, we do have kind of tacit approval from both the cities that they would welcome this based on the latest legal review and the updated resolution that was presented.
I noticed
Now, right?
last time I went to the meeting, there was, the city managers were both in attendance. Are they considered a board member?
They are non-voting
Yeah, they're like staff members.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Griffin would be welcome.
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Just another meeting. All right.
Can't have too many of those.
Going.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna wait for that, thanks.
Okay, we'll move along to unfinished business, and that would be the Emergency Services Committee. Griffin, could you describe that a little bit, where we are with the AMR?
Sure, thank you. So staff is still in the process of reviewing the AMR service agreement. Once the review is complete, the agreement can be signed and executed by the township board with authorization granted at the August 7th meeting. The review is taking place in two major steps. One is in terms of the legal review of the contract itself. Staff sent a list of questions to the Emergency Services Committee and will be attending the September 12th meeting to discuss these questions and attempt to get resolutions to them before staff is ready to recommend to the township board to sign the agreement. Our appointed representative to that committee, Tony Shippa, who's here, we appreciate your attendance, has been copied on that message, so he's aware of some of staff's concerns as well. But maybe the bigger part of this for today is we've also had the township's legal counsel confirm that the fact that no assessments have been levied for the past few years via the special assessment that's been used as a funding source for this agreement in the past doesn't take away that it remains in place and is still an option to fund this in the future. There are some steps that the township board will want to consider in terms of reinitiating that special assessment. The first being a public hearing to give the public an opportunity to speak on that reinstatement. And if staff if staff is directed and the township board, direct staff to schedule that public hearing for the October 2nd meeting, we would also make sure that all resolutions or other documentation necessary to get this back in place for the winter tax rolls are taken care of. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
I guess, are any of the, things that need to be clarified, or the questions that you have on the agreement, do any of them seem substantial enough to be real roadblocks, or are they just?
I don't think so. They're all in your packet. If that's something you want to look at, I'm more than happy to attempt to answer any specifics about them, but they are in the packet. They're more clarifying questions or suggestions, maybe the biggest one being just in terms of our financial obligation per the agreement. It doesn't actually change our obligation, but it just clarifies, instead of talking about fractions of fractions, we would outline it as percentages. And to directly answer your question, no, I don't think any of them are substantive to the point of preventing us from reentering, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I think it's important to get them addressed, or at least have that committee acknowledge some of our concerns.
So is it your understanding that the ESC will be in a position on the 12th, September 12th? Yeah. To respond to the issues you brought up, or are you waiting to hear from Deb Perez? Or?
So it is my understanding they will be in a position to answer my questions, because that's why they want me to attend that meeting as well. Okay. So I was invited to attend that meeting, as I normally wouldn't, because we have such a qualified representative on that committee, but I think I was invited to attend specifically to get responses to these questions. I also recognize that it's an amendment to the contract, and there's a number of other parties involved, so some of these may not be able to be addressed at this iteration, but going back to your question, Abby, I think that's why it's important we bring them up, if not for now, but at least to put some concerns on the committee's radar for future iterations and discussions with AMR.
And can you outline and share with everyone the timing requirements relative to if we were to have this hearing as part of the October 2nd board meeting? I mean, like, you know, the notification, the number of days.
Sure. So I don't have all of the specifics in front of me, but one of the conversations we've had with legal counsel is in terms of notification of the public hearing, that if the township board direct staff will schedule on October 2nd, we would be looking at 2 separate newspaper notifications that would include time, date, place, and purpose of the hearing. If I believe it would be the week before, and then I think 2 weeks before, but staff would confirm that before posting, and we would be following up with legal counsel to make sure we are doing the necessary postings. But that is the route we would be going, is official newspaper announcement, in addition to the supplementary things that the township board's directed staff to move towards. So using the new newsletter and using our Facebook and other more unofficial notification sources.
Thank you. And I'm just asking because I just want to make sure, because time goes so fast, that we're within the window, because my personal preference would be, if everyone agrees, I don't know if we need to vote on this or just discuss it, but it makes sense to me that we try to have this hearing within the October 2nd meeting.
Yes, that's the recommendation that staff has proposed. I would encourage the township board to make a formal motion to schedule that.
Okay.
But yes, if that's the direction the township board decides to move, staff would be starting that process as soon as the end of this week to ensure that all of those deadlines are met and that proper notification occurs for that public hearing.
And just to remind everyone, even though it would be October 2nd, the contract and the agreement and the fiscal responsibility is as of August 1st. And to that point, you may not know, I don't know, Tony might know. Has the service get reinstated to the southern half of the township on August 1st, or is it sort of on hold?
At this point, we have not re-signed that agreement, so my understanding would be it has not.
Well, there is ambulance service to the south side of our township, just so we all understand that.
Right.
They're still servicing us from the Fenville office.
Right.
And from the Holland office. What we're doing is we're reinitiating paying our portion to have a full-time staff at the Fenville office.
Right.
That's what this is all about. We're not without service. Make sure we all understand that. We're just paying our fair share back to the ambulance company for keeping that ambulance in Fenville.
Right, no, that I understand. I guess I'm just asking, if theoretically there's been this delay because of the public hearing needed in October, does that mean the financial obligation and the service contract would start in October or be retroactive?
I can't answer that.
All right.
But I can tell
I'm
you
just
that
curious
the
about
service
that.
is going on.
Yeah, and
It's
so
not
the
a huge
agreement,
deal,
the
it's a
agreement is
portion of
backdated to August 1, so my understanding is we would be responsible for our share once and assuming the contract is signed and we get that funding source back up and going.
Okay.
Any more questions? Go ahead.
No, I, are we making?
We have a motion.
Did you want me to? Okay. I'll move to schedule a public hearing regarding the township board's intent to reinstate the special assessment district for ambulance service on the winter tax rolls, which impacts the southern half of the township during the regular scheduled township board meeting on October 2nd.
I'll support that.
Any discussion? Questions, concerns? Okay. All those in favor of the motion as stated?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our next item is Harbor Authority and Michigan Tech study. I think that I would like Griffin to talk a little bit about that, not in too much depth, starting with, do we have money in the budget?
Sure, so we do not currently have, money in the budget budgeted for financially supporting this grant. So staff attended a meeting on August 22nd with Allegheny County representatives from the city of Saugatuck and the city of the village of Douglas. And Allegheny County has requested a resolution of support and the amount the township intends to contribute towards this grant's required match. Staff would like to clarify that we do not have any obligation to financially support this grant. The request is $20,000. We would not need to contribute that full amount. The township board would have the option to decide to contribute that full amount, a partial amount, or no amount at all. What's included in the packet is a brief description of the study that's being proposed, as well as a sample of the resolution that the Allegheny County Commissioners passed acknowledging this grant, and the recommended resolution that we could amend if that is the direction the township board decides to move. I would just like to clarify that the reason we are being asked by the county to contribute is the county has been awarded the grant. They are now in the process of deciding if they are going to accept that grant or not. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question that maybe you can answer, but
Sure.
if necessary, I'd like, since Ken Truster stayed on it. At that last meeting of the Harbor Authority that we all attended, the two cities made it clear that they were going to wait and sort of rely on a recommendation from the Harbor Authority on pursuing this, the validity, the necessity, and the importance of doing this. Has there been any movement on that front?
Well, the Harbor Authority has not formally taken that action to recommend either supporting it or any amount of that.
Right.
I think what we've been trying to do in Saugatuck is probably in the same boat that you all are, is to determine what's the value of this, you know, what value we're gonna get in return for a contribution. And, I've learned some things that, show there is some value, but I think that needs to be taken to the Harbor Authority, and that would be the appropriate channel then to come back to each of the municipalities.
Do you expect that to be a major agenda item for the next meeting?
I do.
I think we should wait then and revisit this after that meeting.
Yeah, if I may, I
Yeah.
think that if my council or you all or Douglas, would say, no way, we're not gonna support that, that's something that'd be important to know going in. But if we all have an open mind, then we should, you know, debate it at the Harbor Authority and come back with a recommendation to you all.
And has there been any other, either discussion or clarification? I know there was a kind of a question mark of the fiduciary responsibility relative to the grant money coming in and who it would go to and who would administer it. Is that?
The discussion at that August 26th meeting is that the county would be the fiduciary.
Okay.
They would be who contributions would be sent to it. They are going to be the ones receiving the grant and managing the grant. However, as you can see in their resolution, one of their stipulations is that a third party is going to be maintaining compliance with the grant, and that third party is Michigan Tech.
Okay. Thank you. Because I know there was talk at one point of a kind of a private business party being in the middle of this, and I wanted to clarify that.
That's not my understanding at the time.
I haven't heard that either.
Okay. But we'll keep our eye on that.
I think I know what you. Okay.
Are there any other questions in regards to this at this time? I know, the county does have a timeline in terms of when they can accept this grant. They've requested, support or at least knowledge of how we would like to move by the end of September, acknowledging it's the beginning of September, and to my knowledge, neither of the two cities have brought this before their elected boards yet. The township is in a position to decide to take action at this meeting, to table it for a future meeting, or some other option.
When's your next meeting, Ken?
Our Harbor Authority
yeah.
meets the third Tuesday of the month, so that would be when?
I think we should table this to the October meeting.
I agree.
I make a motion to table this Harbor Authority grant issue to October 2nd meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion is to table the resolution of support indicating the township's intention to participate in the Harbor's grant, cost sharing, and we'll do a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we have back in front of us the personnel policy and organizational chart. Everybody had a chance to review it, I'm sure. There's probably questions, comments, or feedback. Brenda, do you have anything?
I was gonna comment on something that you did update that we talked at last time, and now I cannot remember what it was.
Page 31?
I can start if you need more time.
I had one of those too.
I don't know what it was, I'm thinking as I go.
Yeah.
Well, while we're waiting, I want to thank you. I want to point out and acknowledge the addition of Martin Luther King Day.
That's it, that's what it was.
As a holiday.
That was my follow-up.
I think that's a positive move.
Oh, boy, thank you for.
Well, okay, I thought maybe that was it.
My
further discussion about the, full-time
Yeah,
employee definition.
that was another thing we
Yeah.
had discussed at
So I don't
the
know.
meeting.
So just, I know at our last meeting, we talked about the definition of a permanent full-time employee, and perhaps taking a look at adjusting that to 32 or 36 hours. I think it would be wise if we looked at what we want to define that as now, rather than get into a situation where we have a full-time employee, say, someday Lori only wants to work 4 days a week, and she can handle all her work in 4 days a week and wants to have Fridays off, that we are not amending our personnel policy for a person, that we kind of decide in advance, would we accept 4 days a week as defined, or, as a full-time position.
Or less hours within that, those 4 days.
Right, sure,
Yeah.
right. So, I think in my experience, it's been consistent, that most organizations are accepting 32 hours to be defined as full-time work. I think it's just beneficial to look at it now, rather than when we're in a situation of potentially adjusting it for a person.
And I wanted to ask, just about for consistency's sake, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, did we not accept for insurance purposes 30 hours a week?
30.
Or was it 32?
32, I think.
Was it, okay. I just think it should
That
be
makes sense, it would be.
I just think it should be the same, so
uniform,
whether
yeah.
it was 30, 32, seems like those should be consistent.
I think that, changing it from 40 to between 32 to 40 would be a nice way to
Cover. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I agree.
And can benefits be adjusted as well? Like, you still qualify but pay more in premiums, or no? Is it just the same? You have to work at least 32 hours to enjoy the benefits, or?
A lot of that's gonna depend on the specific policies,
Okay.
the specific insurance policies we have at that time.
Okay.
If I can, clarify, one thing, if my understanding is correct, the reason we would want to ensure full-time employment is because for our personnel policy, full-time employees are eligible for benefits. I would also like to clarify that as this is currently written, regular part-time employees, it states in some cases regular part-time employees are eligible for benefits. So the fact that someone may be working less than 40 hours does not immediately remove them from benefit eligibility per this policy. We would then have to go in terms of what our specific insurance policies, what they allow, when making that decision.
What about, like, paid time off and such? Can that be adjusted?
Again, yeah, as this is written, we would have some discretion in determining that with that employee. If I am understanding the township board correctly, staff can make the adjustment and of full-time employment between 32 and 40 hours and update the regular part-time to coincide with that. Is there anything else? Are there any other questions, any other aspects that you all would like staff to take another look at?
No, I thought it was
Great.
Well, no, it's great, but I'm just gonna question in the training period section,
Okay.
it just seems perhaps a bit,
What page is that, John?
same page, around 31, at the bottom of 31. The training period up to 6 months, first 6 months of new employment, that's great, but it mentions written evaluations at 30, 60, and 90-day intervals.
I think that's,
I'm not sure that's doable, and we may have already,
Well, this policy is
Missed
not
that.
currently in place.
I know.
Right.
So it wouldn't be applying to any current employees. I think the intention behind that is starting to move our organization towards one of continuous feedback and improvement. One of the things I know the township board has heard me discuss is the lack of performance evaluations in the past.
Yes.
So there's discussion of performance evaluations in here, but I think a training period or an onboarding period or an orientation period, however you would like to look at that, is crucial in terms of helping the employee get up to speed, providing that formal documentation. I think starts employees knowing that this is an organization that values that feedback and is going to provide those competencies.
I think 30, 60, 90 is pretty standard for new employees.
Written?
Yeah, well, evaluation, yes.
I've never encountered that, and I've
No?
run HR departments. I just think it's one of those things that sounds good, but we're setting ourselves up to not be able to fulfill it. I think I would just suggest a little looser language about feedback and written evaluations and their importance within that first 6 months. That seems very tight to me.
And I understand, and that's something that staff's willing to look at again, if that's what the board wants. I think it's also important to consider, we're going through a time that there was a lot of rapid transition recently. My understanding is that is not common for our organization, and therefore, going through a training period with an employee, if at all, we would be going through with one employee at a time, and that could be a really good opportunity to give that employee the extra time they may need early on to fully integrate into the organization. I totally see where if we had mass turnover again from an organizational standpoint, that could be really tough. I just don't know if that is what we are going to see in the future.
And we don't have, and won't have that much staff. Staff. Doesn't apply to elected
True.
officials.
No, I know.
That's a good point too.
Yes.
A lot of our staff are contractors as well.
Right.
Where
It's different.
it is. We have very few what I would consider traditional employees.
I think it's good for both, the organization and the employee.
I would agree.
So,
If I can request, is this a section we would like staff to look at again? Can I get some consensus from the township board? I can come up with some different options for language in terms of training periods language. We can remove it all together. I mean, there are a lot of different options, if I can get some direction.
it's nice of you to call it training as opposed to double secret or just probation.
And I think that's
That's a more positive.
I also think it's crucial because all of our employees here at the township are at-will employees.
Right.
So calling it probation sometimes gives it sometimes gives people a false sense of reliance or a false understanding after that ends.
Right.
Because all of our employees are
Good
at-will.
point. Good point. Yeah. I'm fine with that language as it is.
I can take a look at it. I can.
I feel both ways about it. I agree with John. I don't want people to be locked into something, so maybe just soften that language, like every effort should be made to do written evaluation at 30, 60, or 90, something like that, just so it's not like we're in, we're not being compliant if they don't happen at those exact timelines. I really appreciate you tightening this up. Evaluations need to happen. They need to be documented. We need to have a schedule. We need to have guidelines. But I just don't want people to be boxed so in that if something can't happen, that they get, questioned or criticized. So that's just my 2 cents.
I can take another look at that and we'll bring it back at the October meeting.
Thanks for all your work, Griffin.
Thank you.
Yeah, it really is.
Very good report.
Those are tiny sections compared to the whole, personnel handbook.
Body of work.
Okay, so we'll bring that back at October 2. And next on our agenda, we have the door and lock project.
Can I interrupt you real quick?
Yeah.
Can we get a motion to table that till
Oh,
October,
that's
just for
right.
consistency?
Yes.
I'll move to table, the personnel policy handbook until the October 2nd.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Then I think we are ready to move on to the door and lock project.
I want to start out, if I can, on this one, to apologize that I don't have an updated quote for you. I've been working with Holland Lock and Safe to compile specific parts of the door that were put in front of you at the last meeting. But at this point, before you all start your understanding, just to understand the recommended approach that was requested at the previous meeting would cost more than the minimum one, which was about $400 at the last meeting, and less than the maximum one, which was about $800 at the last meeting. So just so the township board has some a window to consider in terms of the options we're looking at work between $400 and $800 roughly.
Any more questions on the door and lock project? I would entertain a motion to authorize the township manager to proceed with the lock replacement project.
I'll move to authorize the township manager to proceed with the lock replacement project.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. The next item is under new, we have,
The new business.
We're the new.
The new.
right,
The roundup.
we'll talk about Roundup.
Well, the reason I asked to have this on the agenda is I did want to discuss it a little bit, because I've got my concerns also. I feel that sometimes these practices were put in place at a time when there wasn't knowledge what could happen to people, and now that we're learning more and more, as my personal experience, as my husband's been battling leukemia from exposure to Roundup and Agent Orange, we feel. And I